HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's our post-game show. You know we do this every time the Arkansas Razorback basketball team completes a game. This one felt like it might never end. This is one of those games where if you're an Arkansas Razorback fan, there's frustration at times. But at the end of the day, you get a W. Arkansas is 10-0 in first-round tournament events under Eric Musselman. Now in year 5, Muss, 10-0 the Hogs are in any kind of tournament format. So they're 3-0 in regular season tournaments when you look at first-round games. Hall of Fame Classic, they won that a couple of years ago in 2 games. You only played 2 in that one. Last year in Maui, Arkansas has a blowout, an easy win in the first round over Louisville. Goes 2-1 in that event overall and gets 3rd place in it against a really good field. And then at some point, Arkansas determined that it was going to win this game against Stanford. Opening game, it's all that matters. W is all that matters. There's other things that matter too, but you got to survive and advance. Now in these in-season tournament formats, it's not win or go home. You still get more games. I mean, Arkansas, had it lost, would be playing Michigan on Thursday. Instead, though, you'd rather be in the winners bracket. Memphis and Arkansas, there's some history there, and they're in border state. So there's, I don't know if I'd say that there's a rivalry there. There were times in the past in the early 90s, late 80s, where it was a bit of a rivalry there. Other times historically. But Arkansas now advances. So your battle for Atlanta semifinal field is set. You've got North Carolina 14th ranked Tar Heels taking on Villanova. Those were the 2 top teams on that side of the bracket. Both won in advance. They won rather handily. North Carolina knocking off Northern Iowa. Villanova taking care of a gritty Texas Tech team, but more talent for Villanova. Better inside-out pieces there. And this is how you wanted the bracket to set up. If you're Arkansas, you get Memphis or Michigan, but I mean, you need to win in advance. Now Arkansas is 1 win away from having a successful trip to battle for Atlantis, and the gravy is going 3-0 and winning it. I know that's the goal, but I mentioned it. Arkansas is 10-0 in tournament formats, whether it's regular season, SEC tournament. 4 SEC tournaments, Arkansas has won its opening round game, its first round game, whenever that was, their first game. Arkansas has advanced to the quarterfinals in that with double byes, or had to play the Wednesday game a couple of times. But they've never lost in the opening round of the SEC tournament. Same thing in 3 NCAA tournaments since Muss has been here. In fact, we know the history there. Back-to-back Elite Eights followed by a Sweet 16. 10-0 for Arkansas. They're now 17-7 in tournament format competition under Musselman. So that's a really good record when you understand that if you lose in a tournament, you're not really playing for anything, whether it's lose and go home. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless everybody that's a Razorback fan. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. It's Thanksgiving somewhere, and it's not too far from it here in Arkansas. This game was supposed to start at 6:30. Things in these tournament fields often get behind a little bit, so the Arkansas didn't tip till about 8:02. The game was on ESPNU. There was a high school game where it was similar to Arkansas. That game went to overtime, back and forth. You weren't sure who was going to win it. And then Arkansas played the same kind of card game with Stanford, the Cardinal. Look, for the longest time to me, this looked like a game where you were trying to figure out which team was going to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. I thought both teams were allergic to success forever. That first half was one of the ugliest I've seen. Okay, let's just say that. The offenses were bad. Musselman has said the defense is where all the problems are, and there was a lot. There was a lot in the last game against Greensboro, second half against Old Dominion, a game Arkansas won. The offense had been really good until I thought against Greensboro it was not very good. Not only that first half, but even in the second half when they scored 48 points, because nothing comes easy. The ball's has zero energy, in my opinion, right now. And it was like this in both halves and both overtimes. If you look at this game, Arkansas, 23 of 76 from the field, 30.3% shooting, 5 of 19, from 3, 26.3%. Arkansas had 6 assists in this game. In the last game they had 7. So in their last 47 made field goals, they've only had 13 assists in these last 2 games. Everything is a drive. I don't care how many times they pass it back and forth on the perimeter. No, there are very few passes right now that lead to an easy score for Arkansas. You just got to have them to put teams away because Arkansas dominated so many statistical areas in this game. They had a huge rebound edge until that second overtime when Stanford got some offensive rebounds and started controlling the glass a little bit. But Arkansas +6, 52-46 overall. Offensive rebounds +9, 21-12. Second chance points 21-7. Dominant. Turnovers, Arkansas +6, 19-13. Arkansas used that for really, but still a 2-point advantage in points off turnovers, 12-10. Arkansas's bench outscored Stanford 22-14. Points in the paint, Arkansas was +2 there. Arkansas had, Chandler Lawson had 5 blocks, Stanford had 0. We knew this wasn't a rim protection kind of team, and that showed out there. Arkansas more than doubled up Stanford in steals, 9-4. So how on earth did this game go to overtimes? Well, there was a field goal discrepancy. Arkansas's defense was good most of the first half. I think both teams, I don't think this was a good defensive team when you look at Stanford coming in. The metrics and stats show it. Arkansas is a bad offensive team right now. I went through the shooting numbers and the low assists. Stanford gets 16 assists to Arkansas 6 on 26 made field goals. So more than half of their field goals were assisted. If you looked at Bynum, he got his average of 8 assists. He did have 3 turnovers. He's only averaging 1 per game. But I told you in the pregame, this guy sets teammates up for easy scores. Late in the second half, Arkansas was up 49-48 in 3 consecutive possessions. Bynum just made just the easy pass, but it set guys up for easy looks around the basket. It was a 6-0 run. Stanford went up 5. Arkansas had to kind of claw back into it. It was back and forth. There were times you thought Arkansas was going to, Arkansas needed a 4-0 run, by the way, in the final 17 seconds of regulation to get it to overtime. And what did Arkansas do in there? You got 2 of 2 made free throws by Tremont Mark. Let me go back. I got to flip around my score sheet, my play-by-play that I took. It's so confusing. But Tremont Mark had 2 of 2 free throws with 17 seconds left. Arkansas fouled Bynum with 13.8. He missed the front of it, a 1-and-1. Really good, a 90+% free throw shooter coming in, 10 of 11 before that. Then Arkansas gets the defensive rebound. Brazil gets it to Devo. He drives all the way in, draws a foul, makes both free throws with 6.8 seconds left. The game's tied at 59 all. Stanford misses a shot at the attempt at the buzzer, and we go to overtime. So Arkansas needed that 4-0 run. It reminded me of Maui against San Diego State when I think Arkansas needed to score I think Arkansas had like a 4-0 run in the closing seconds, and they had a turnover in between a putback and something else, but it almost looked like Arkansas was dead to rights, and they got that game to turn in their favor, and those were Kamani Johnson made that tip in that saved Arkansas's bacon to get it to overtime. But this was kind of similar to that. Arkansas needed that 4-0 run in the last 17 seconds. That's hard to do. A lot of times it's night time, and you've lost back-to-back games. Arkansas had never beaten Stanford head-to-head. They only played 2 times prior. Arkansas is now 1-3 all-time against the Cardinal. So Eric Musselman, not only are his teams 10-0 in first rounds of tournament, any kind of tournament play you want to look at, then they've got a really good record in neutral site. Now they're 5-1, and when you look at regular season tournaments under Musselman, the record's 5-1 there. This was Arkansas's first game away from home after playing their first 4 at Bud Walton Arena. So I'm kind of meandering here and going through some stuff. I went through some of the negatives because I think it's a problem. I think Arkansas's got problems on both sides of the ball, still figuring things out. This is not the team that played Purdue in the final exhibition game. But that game got to overtime, and who helped get it to overtime was Tremont Mark with a 3 to get it there to beat, on Arkansas's final possession on offense to tie the game, get it to overtime, and then, he had made his last 3 free throws in overtime, had a mid-range jumper at the nail in that overtime period as well to help Arkansas pull it out. I mentioned Mark's 2 free throws in those final 17 seconds, and then Devo. But Mark, this game was back and forth once you got in that second overtime. In the final 150, Tremont Mark, as badly as Arkansas was seeing the ball have energy via the pass, which as I talked in the pregame, they really need to find a way to do that. It's just not happening. We're going to go through how it affects everybody. But Tremont Mark put the team on his shoulders again, back to back 2-point buckets off drives, just mano a mano, 1-on-1. And every time Stanford was within a point, he'd score and make it 3. Come back and forth. So a 1-point to 3-point lead for Arkansas. They sustained it in the final 150. Now, Stanford helped Arkansas out. They did not have a great free throw shooting night, missed some free throws, including the overtime sessions, and so that helped Arkansas. But Tremont Mark 6 points off 3 buckets in the final 2 minutes of that second overtime sent Arkansas to the promised land, 77-74. If I didn't even mention the score in 2 overtimes, but Tremont Mark, a team high 25 points. He didn't stuff the stat sheet. I think he had a rebound, a steal. He didn't have a lot of other stats, but he and he was huge at the free throw line. I think he was 12 of 15. Arkansas finishes 26 of 33. 78.8%. I said in the pregame, Stanford doesn't get a lot of free throws. They play in space. They get a lot of assists. They don't have a lot of turnovers on average, but a lot of their assists are for easy scores and where they're really beating your defense, where you're not even close enough to contact them. This was a physical game at times, but Arkansas 26 of 33 at the foul line. Stanford only 13 of 24. So Arkansas takes 9 more free throws. You expected them to have at least be around 10 or more at the line in free throw attempts margin. So it was only 9, but Arkansas makes 13 more free throws than Stanford. So if you want to look at it from the free throw line and say that's where you won the game, that's probably true because you dominated all these other categories, yet your field goal shooting was so bad, and Stanford assisted on theirs. I mean, they ended up shooting 40%. That's not great, but they were 30% from 3, 9 of 30. They were averaging just over 9 makes from 3 a game. Arkansas didn't take away a lot when you look at the totality of the numbers, but 26 of 65 overall field goal shooting, 40%. It's 10 points better than Arkansas's 30.3%, but Stanford was a team that was shooting over 50%, well over 50% inside the arc. Tonight, it's only 17 of 30. So Arkansas did a good job defensively overall when you look at it. The start of the second half, Arkansas had some major letdowns defensively, and you saw Stanford make its first 6 field goals, go from a 2-point halftime deficit, hit its first 6 field goals, including a couple of threes. I think it was a 14-5 run, a 9-point margin there to go from 2 down to up 7. Stanford led by as many as 9. It was 40-31. And then Arkansas went on a run, and I thought that was critical for the Hogs. They were down 40-31. Battle hit a 3. Arkansas, they were hard to come by tonight. Blocker got a steal, and Battle missed a layup after that steal, but Brazil got a putback dunk. Look, Arkansas missed. I mean, it felt like they missed 20 layups tonight. They missed 3 dunks. Brazil a couple of putback dunks. Blocker a missed dunk after a steal. How about Layden Blocker off the bench, man? I've covered this kid since 8th grade, and I've said the same things about him. Huge heart. He's one of those guys in the grind and crunch time of games. You want him on the court. I didn't know how soon that would translate at the high major level, but that's what he was throughout his career, whether it was grassroots, high school. He was a game closer. He's a guy that's going to get on the glass. 2 of his 4 points came off an offensive rebound. He made another pull-up mid-range shot at the end of a late shot clock for Arkansas in that first half. He did that against Purdue. End of shot clock in the second half in that exhibition game. He scored his first points as a Hog tonight. Big minutes from Layden Blocker, 3 steals. And he's making plays on the defense. And one of the things we talked about in pregame, the last 3 games, Arkansas 3 steals, 4 steals, 3 steals, whatever. They weren't getting enough live ball turnovers. Tonight I mentioned it. They were 9-4 edge and steals, 5-0 edge and blocks thanks to Chandler Lawson. But Arkansas, was +6 overall in turnovers. I mentioned that already, 19-13. How about Trevor Brazile? One of the things I was saying and calling for the last 2 games, Arkansas's got to find a way to get a big night from him, a big production night. He had a very good effort on the glass overall and defensive glass the previous game in a loss to Greensboro, 9 rebounds, season high. How about 14 points, career high 17 rebounds? He was 2 of 5 from 3. That's 40%. The only guy that shot a decent clip there. 6 of 6 at the free throw line. Yeah, he missed a couple of dunks and didn't shoot overall very well from the field, but 17 rebounds. That's outstanding. 2 or 3 steals. Trevor Brazile had a game. He had a monster game for Arkansas, as did Chandler Lawson. He gave Arkansas its best defensive stretch inside the paint against Greensboro in a stretch where Arkansas clawed back into it after being down 15. But he hadn't really put together a good game since Purdue in the exhibition season. How about 9 points? He was 4-7 from the field. He was efficient. Hardly anybody was. He was on a bad shooting night and getting it around the basket. A couple of his scores late were off good passes from Devo. One on an inbounds play underneath the basket. Another one was in secondary break. Arkansas, and those were the only two easy looks Arkansas got all night off a pass. You've got to get better on offense. It's not just about missing threes and being short on shots. When the ball has energy and you get the defense out of position, it leads to easy scores. Not everything's a struggle. You don't have to play one on whoever to get it. And sometimes when you're playing one on everybody, even layups don't go down for you because you're having to pound that damn thing a lot just to get there. Now, Arkansas missed some chippies. There's no doubt about it, including dunks. I mean, when I look at the stats on this game, Arkansas probably should have won this game by 15 points, maybe better in regulation, but they just couldn't put it together. Their offense stunk. Even when things got going a little bit in the second half and the team started scoring more, Arkansas is just not helping itself on offense. You saw L. Ellis really struggle. Didn't start for the first time tonight. Musselman changed it up. Brazil, Tremont Mark, and Devo Davis, those are the guys I said in pregame. Those are the first names I mentioned when I said if Musselman shuffles things up, those were the first three guys I thought I saw in the starting lineup, and I wasn't sure what else he would do. I thought Ellis might get another chance to start the game. And then when he came off the bench tonight, he was just had a really poor night. He had a very difficult time as a ball handler. Defensively, he struggled all year. He missed a layup. He ended up watching most of this game, and I thought Blocker came in and really gave Arkansas not only energy and a spark. It reminded me when Devo was a freshman. He would do things like that. Blocker was kind of carrying that banner tonight. But Chandler Lawson, I mentioned the 9 points. I didn't even tell you. He had 13 rebounds. We talked about the 5 blocks. This guy was so effective in the paint all night long. This was not a game where Chandler stepped out and took a three. He's been efficient in a very small sample size taking threes. This was a game where you needed him and you needed Trevor Brazil in the paint holding down the fort. Mekhi Mitchell got the start tonight, his first start since last season when he started most every game for Arkansas. He got a start tonight. He had 6 points, helped Arkansas a little bit in the first half. He had a little baby hook right before halftime to give Arkansas the lead at halftime after they'd struggled so much. It was only 22-20 at the break. Mitchell, 6 points, 3 rebounds. Caliph Battle fouled out. Another poor shooting night for him. He did hit a 3 in that run Arkansas needed after falling behind by 9. He sparked that run with that first 3 that he made. But look, take it from this guy. Anthony Black will tell you, it's not easy. He went out to Maui and put up big numbers, helped Arkansas, but man, those were grind games out there once you got by Louisville. You really had to scrap against a good Creighton team that would eventually make it, right, AB? Make it to the Elite Eight. Arkansas lost by 3 in that one, and then I mentioned that San Diego State game. Looked like Arkansas might have been dead to rights in that one. They battled back, and you just got to have guys step up. Chandler Lawson was kind of the Kamani Johnson tonight in that sense, and Anthony Black, now with a rookie with the Magic getting a lot of starts, was in this situation. Arkansas had so many different guys step up when they went to Maui, and it wasn't always pretty, and so I don't think Stanford's on the level of a San Diego State or Creighton. That's another problem. I thought this was, just looking at them, this does not look like this is to me an average college basketball team. We'll see what they do. Second loss now. They had a home loss to Santa Clara. They were down to Cal State Northridge late and had a big run at the end of that game to actually pull it out. But I'm not a believer that the Stanford team's a great measuring stick for what Arkansas is. But you've got to find ways to win games. Arkansas did that against a Purdue team that's going to be ranked number 1 in every metric in the world. Look at the run Purdue just had out in Maui. You talk about 3 games in 3 days. Beats number 11 Gonzaga, beats number 7 Tennessee, beats number 4 Marquette. Didn't have to play number 1 Kansas because Marquette took care of Kansas by 14 in the semifinals. But that's a hell of a run for a Purdue team that everybody knows is really good. Ranked second right now. They'll be number 1, but I think every metric out there, if they weren't already number 1, they were in KenPom anyway. That's kind of solidified for now until they lose, I guess. But Arkansas has measured itself against the best team in the country. Exhibition season, it's not going to help the resume. But it lends itself to proof of concept that this team can find ways, even against that level of competition. Yeah, it was a home game, exhibition, so what? Both teams were trying to win it. And then Arkansas hasn't looked like that team since. They just haven't. The regular season's been different. It's been discombobulated at the 5 spot. Jalen Graham not even making the trip. Back spasms are what we're told, and so he's back in Fayetteville. Not there to help Arkansas on the front line. I mentioned the guys though. This was the best game collectively for their front line this season. It absolutely was. But it's one game, and I think it's an inferior opponent. I think Arkansas should have had this matchup in the bag based on what the players' talent are. It just goes to show you that right now Arkansas is misfiring a lot, not just shooting, no pun intended on the shot taking and making or lack of it, but I think in a lot of areas they're disjointed. Every time they had a chance to put together a run and build a lead, I mean Arkansas never really led by much. I can't think of a score where Arkansas. I mean I have to go back and flip through this. I don't think the Hogs had very big leads in this game. I just don't think it was there. I think they were one possession leads when they got them. Going back to the first half, yeah, I mean, I don't think Arkansas had great. I need to go back and look at all of it again because I tried to jump on here. I did get a game story out at HogvilleNET. By the way, it's HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Thank you for joining me. I want to thank my sponsors real quick. Parkway Automotive, Fence Brokers Inc., and Jose's Bar and Grill in Tawnytown. Thanks to those guys, to my sponsors. But Arkansas now 4-1 on the season. I mentioned all the success they've had in tournament play. It means it's a positive. Arkansas is built for this. Eric Musselman's the common denominator, getting his teams ready. But then you got to go and win the next one. Fans are not going to be happy with win one, lose one after losing to Greensboro. That Greensboro loss sets the bar a little higher for expectations to get things going again. And so, Arkansas can, if it splits one of 2 games here, it's a win. It's a win coming out to the Battle for Atlantis and getting 2 wins in 3 games. If Arkansas can knock off Memphis, it's a good Memphis team. It's a team that really has looked really good this year, looked good in the first half, looked good for most of the game against Michigan. Michigan went to some zone, and Memphis had some bad stretches there where that game got really competitive. Then Memphis pushed it back out and ended up winning by 4. But that game was tight late too. And so there's no team over on in Maui that looks invulnerable. In Battle for Atlantis. In Maui, there's a few teams that look pretty damn good, and they matched up against each other. Over here, I'm not so sure yet. Do we have contenders for deep runs in the NCAA tournament? It's so early to know that. But just the makeup of these teams over here, I've been saying for a while, I feel like Arkansas does. But the way they're playing right now, that sounds like a joke almost, doesn't it? They're not playing well, but they found a way to win. And you can build on that. Arkansas just looked like a team that's not sure what it's doing, especially in offense. I go to Trevor in Brazil. I mean, I said he was 2 of 5 from 3. He continues just to step into threes. The ball's not really finding him off good movement. Guys playing off of him. They're trying to play Arkansas for the drive until they can prove they can make some shots. And he knocked a couple down in those kind of scenarios. There's almost no offense running through him in 2-man game and trying to figure out how to really get him incorporated. I mean, Arkansas relied on all his offensive work, his offensive rebounding work tonight, maybe getting to the free throw line or getting a putback. And there was some of that, but they're not really running offense through him. And this is your best player. This is your marquee guy. And he's not involved enough, in my opinion. I've already got issues with how the ball movement's not working for the team. And Arkansas ends up having to just go one-on-one so many times late in clock. It's a problem. And the first 3 games, the shooting percentages were great because guys have talent in their drive games. They've got the ability to finish those off in inferior competition. Stanford was a little bit better than most of what Arkansas's played this year. Again, I think, I don't know what they're going to do in the Pac-12. Maybe I'll be wrong about this. What happened to Ellis tonight? He's had a poor outing, and he didn't start tonight. Ellis has really struggled as a lead guard all year. He's had a couple of games where he gives you hope. He's had several games where his scoring is fine and has helped Arkansas, in fact. Defensively is another area where I think he has struggled. I think all of the Razorbacks continue to struggle on that end, even though tonight they were tougher in a lot of ways. I mean, they dominated the glass for the most part until the end. So they were doing that. They forced more turnovers. I've talked about that in pregame. It's something they really need to do. and they got that going their way. But the advantage in points off turnovers was only +2. +6 in turnovers, only +2 there because Arkansas is surrendering unforced turnovers. Guys just, they're working so hard on defense to get some, and then on offense, they're just, rolling the ball to the other team or kicking it to them. This is not a good defensive team in Stanford. This is not something where you go, give Stanford some credit here on these turnovers. No. Arkansas, self-inflicted wounds, is not a good defensive team, and Arkansas shoots 30%. Arkansas's offense is in the sneaker. It's actually worse tonight than the defense. And I don't think it was that much better in this last game. I think some of those statistics were misleading. I don't care how many passes they made. Your goal's 200, go throw it around 400 times. Get some easy shots off of that. Arkansas's got to figure that out. I think, they're still in search of a guard that can run the team with pace. We saw Devo Davis and Tremont Mark tonight with Ellis out and a little bit of blocker, but mostly Mark and Davis on the ball. Devo comes in with 0 turnovers. But tonight he had 5. So 0 on the season, 5 tonight. He's still struggling shooting from 3, but he hit a big one, a deep one, a 26-footer that helped Arkansas late when that thing was back and forth. He did knock one down, but 1 of 4. He's struggling at the free throw line this season, 3 of 6 tonight. Hit a couple of big ones at the end of regulation. You had to have those. So sometimes it's when you make them. He missed. He went 1 of 2 in the end of the first overtime to give Arkansas only a 3-point lead instead of extending to 4. And then after the Stanford kid took 3 steps and traveled, he banks home a 3-pointer to send the game to a second overtime. So that missed free throw. So we can talk about not only percentage, but also when do you make them and when do you miss them. So it was good and bad for Devo tonight at the line. But he was playing a lot on the ball, and we saw him have a poor night with turnovers. Tremont Mark played a lot on the ball, and we saw him, he had his moments struggling shooting the ball. The entire team did except Chandler Lawson. But, he made most of his free throws. 15 free throw attempts when I last looked at it, and he had made 12. And then those last 3 buckets, he didn't miss. Arkansas had to have him because it was back and forth. You're up 3, Stanford scores. You got to come back and score, and it was Mark doing that in that second overtime. Excuse me. So if you want to look at the Purdue game, the overtime win in exhibition, Arkansas's 2-0 in overtime games. It's funny because you want to celebrate, you want to be positive about. It amazes me to are shooting threes without a single. I missed that. So this is the other thing. When you're looking at these 3-point efforts the last 2 games, after Arkansas really shot the ball well from 3 leading up to these last 2, I'm going back to lack of ball movement. I'm going back to guys sizing up threes with no energy on the ball. They're not in rhythm, and they're just pulling. And so what happens is even when you do get a good pass that could lead to a make, you're pressing. You're not comfortable. Everyone's hunting to get, see that first one go in and maybe get on a roll. Yeah, this isn't the same team that beat Purdue. Well, it's the same guys. It's I know the point is accurate right now. Arkansas is a bit lost. They're in a bit of a fog on both sides. But they won, and they've got a chance. If they can make it ugly, if it has to be an ugly game tomorrow to win, make it an ugly game. I don't know. Memphis, some of their guys offensively look a lot more polished right now than what Arkansas's guys do. There are just times where you feel like you wonder how much of the offense and the design in the offense can you go watching these results. And you can say, well, it's only 2 games. The shooting percentages, all that were great up until these last 2 games. But these 2 games, you were lucky to come out of them 1-1. You could have been 0-2 in them. And you got a lot more tougher competition. Memphis is a better team than Stanford. The 2 teams on the other side of the bracket, win or lose against Memphis, you're going to play Villanova or North Carolina, a ranked team, in that 3rd game on Friday. And then you come home to play Duke. You have got to be better on offense, helping each other. There's got to be more good ball movement, not just counting how many passes you make, but passes that lead to some easy scores. Stanford, that's how Stanford stayed in this game. Bynum set guys up with some easy stuff. And they didn't have to, you had Lawson in there blocking shots. You had Arkansas grabbing every rebound for a while. Stanford wasn't having luck on the offensive glass until the second overtime. So they had to find some ways to get some easy scores, and that's how their offense basically operates. Arkansas's got to figure out a way to get that. 9 of 26 on layups. Yeah. 1 of 4 on dunks. Yeah, I mean, one of my tweets in the game, Chandler Lawson should play hard tomorrow considering he came from Memphis. A lot of storylines here. Javon Quinterly, the transfer, from Alabama. In that series with Alabama, there were some chippy moments in games with him against the Hogs. There was extra stuff he would talk about in the media about those games and about those matchups. You got Chandler Lawson, who played there. He's from Memphis. So he went to Oregon initially, played 2 years there, transferred 2 years at Memphis. Now he's with the Hogs. You got Jordan Brown, the big man from Memphis inside, who was a McDonald's All-American and played for Muss at Nevada. Kind of played for Muss, didn't play much. He probably played a little more than Bay Falls playing. But that was a situation had Muss not left for Arkansas and stayed at Nevada. I think Jordan Brown was gonna transfer out anyway. I'm not saying that. I think Musselman was justified in his decisions, but it's hard not to play McDonald's All-American and then expect him to come back. And so those things happen, but there'll be extra motivation there. Remember Bebe Iyiola with Hofstra? What was that? 2 years ago, really punished Arkansas with a double-double. I think he played in one game, not very much, on a road game in South Carolina when Arkansas blew that game open. It was the only time he played for the Hogs. He transferred in Musselman's first recruiting class, had to sit out a transfer year. Then he got hurt and didn't play. Then he had to rehab and get back. And the whole time he was at Arkansas, he only saw the court for a few seconds in one game. Transferred out, and a year later at Hofstra, he had a double-double and helped him win that game. So you never know what motivates guys. You could judge players based on what they don't do at your school, and then they might come back and bite you when they face you. You just don't know how all that stuff's going to play out. It's going to be a motivated Memphis Tigers team. They're unbeaten still, 4-0. It's early, but it's a team that went on the road and knocked Missouri around by 15 points, and then got a win over a quality Michigan team. I don't know how good Michigan is, but I think Michigan, and I think the teams we're talking about now in these semifinals are the cream of this event. Arkansas doesn't look like it, but they should be better than this based on the pieces it has. But again, I go back to Brazil. He's not really involved enough in the offense, and I think everything else is just coming so hard for this team. And they've just got to manufacture. That was what the problem was last year. They had no floor spacers last year because no one could shoot from three, and you had injuries to your key guys. Brazil, who showed well early in the year, was out after 8 games, and then Nick Smith Jr. was in and out. He was a scorer, but he never got the kind of rhythm that I think he would have. So you had several things that hurt Arkansas last year, and it boiled down to everybody having to play the same way, get to the basket or get to the free throw line. The way Arkansas's offense is running, it feels like that's what they've got to do, but they've got guys who can shoot from three. They've got more guys who could be efficient in the mid-range. They just can't get them easy. The ball's not moving inside out or side to side enough where they're getting advantage on defenders. By the time Arkansas gets into a shot, there's a defender in front of them. They've got to get by him. Help's coming. Defenses are gapping. And the longer you go playing that way, the more they're going to gap and help because they don't believe you're going to knock down threes or make the right pass on time in someone's pocket to take one. So they got to get that ironed out. Defense, the start of the second half was abysmal, other than some other letdowns. I mean, going full length of the court in 4 seconds, that happens in college basketball. And that was a good inbound play, that sent the game the second overtime. I thought the kid traveled before he took it and banked it home. But there are just some other things. Arkansas is just, they didn't figure out, but, they did a pretty good job on Bynum, in the first half. I thought in the second half, he started feeling good with his game. He scored some too, 13 points. Arkansas shut down the big man Renault for the most part, 8 points and 10 rebounds. He was averaging 19 and 9. He was a guy I kind of thought was a paper tiger. I didn't think he was going to have his way. He doesn't really stretch the floor as a three-point shooter. He's not a big athletic guy. He's not going to be a rim protector and a guy that's just going to, feast on you around the basket unless you let Bynum work you over and get you out of your space and rhythm on defense to where he just sets him up with easy looks. He needed that all night long to score. I thought Renault would. Spencer Jones, the fifth-year big wing. I guess he's a 3-4. I mean, he's a big, 6'7", 6'8" kid. Big night for him, 27 points, knocked down a lot of threes, struggled at the free throw line. That helped Arkansas. Arkansas needed some help in this game late when Stanford was missing some free throws and Arkansas made some. Um, Advantage Arkansas at the free throw line. Everywhere except shooting and moving the ball offensively. Defensively, I thought Arkansas was better overall tonight for the most part than it's shown in a couple of games. But Arkansas also had a quickness and athleticism advantage. If you can't see that, because that was obvious on some of the shot blocks, on some of the steals, and then all those rebounds, just out quicking them and because there was good size. Stanford had size. They just don't have the athleticism and quickness that Arkansas does. So you could see the advantages there. I just don't think Arkansas played to them enough and got bogged down in some ways. But okay, so we're about 35 minutes in. Congratulations, Derek Melson, the Arkansas Razorbacks. You want to get off the floor. You get knocked down against Greensboro. That was ugly. You were beaten in both halves soundly in that game. I don't care what the final score was, 6-point margin. You were decisively beaten in that game, in my opinion. And then a lot of it was on Arkansas. Part of it's a bad matchup with Greensboro. But you come back against a team. I thought Arkansas, I didn't say it in the pregame. I did mention I thought Arkansas had advantage in this game in many ways, and I didn't come out and predict a win. But I thought Arkansas carried this team and played down to the competition at times. Like Blocker with a smile, absolutely. Layden Blocker was outstanding. Now he did have some mistakes. He missed a layup. He missed a dunk. But his energy and making those cluster plays, like I mentioned when Devo was a freshman, remember those plays where he would kind of turn the momentum, get a steal and get it going the other way and just diving on the floor for 50-50 ball. Layden Blocker has that element right now. And Arkansas needs someone to make plays at both sides of it. They don't need everybody just to be, I'm going to go hunt my offense, and we can't move the ball well enough to make it easy. They got plenty of guys that you can give the ball to do that. Blocker brought a little bit of a different element. Brazil was crazy, his length and hops and some of those rebounds he got. I mean, that guy was a warrior tonight. There are times where you feel like he's soft on the glass. At times he is. I mean, the numbers you can look at him and say he's just not in there battling. These last two games, 26 rebounds in the last two games, 17 tonight. He blocked 11 shots in the previous three games. Didn't have any of those tonight. But some of these things he's doing now, how does Arkansas incorporate him on the offense? How do they get him going? He's efficient. He's been efficient. He wasn't tonight. But that's because everything is self-created. Arkansas is not helping, the team is not helping each other, the teammates, with easy stuff. And there's things you can run with Brazil, I believe, to get him downhill off of two-man. To me, the design, I'm not sure what's failing here, but you're not seeing guys cut and time their cuts off of pressure and getting behind defenders off of that kind of pressure. You're not seeing guys offset offensively. They're kind of standing and watching. There's a lot of ball watching on both sides. When Arkansas struggles on defense, there's ball watchers. There's some of that on offense too. They try to run guys into that elbow, that free throw line extended against zone when teams play zone. And they just haven't been effective getting it there and then another quick pass, either back out or a cutter. They're just not doing that. And so there's different ways you can move, I think, Brazil around. I'm just not so sure with the pieces they have how Musman's going to do that. They haven't done it yet. If you go back and look at his games, it's not been a big score, averaging around 10 points a game. Tonight he had 14. Some of that was at the free throw line. But he's not getting easy looks, and the offense isn't really working for him, I don't think. So those are some things I'm throwing out here. I probably focus on a lot of negative stuff tonight. By the way, Stanford won fast break scoring 7-4. So even though Arkansas won that still battle, they really they struggled on the break because they missed some of those layups. 9 of 26 on layups, and they were 1 of 4 on dunks. That's a problem. And most of those were drives, again, one-on-one drives. It shouldn't matter. You got to finish those chippies, whether you're getting it easy off a pass or you're driving. But I think sometimes when all you are is a straight line, you're getting straight line drives, it does make things a little harder because that takes a lot of energy. It's a lot easier to catch a pass when no defense is around and just lay it in. Sometimes those drives, you spend a lot to get there, and then you short it or you long it or you brick it. And Arkansas had too many of those. This should have been an easier game for Arkansas. I still believe that. The big thing is they won. We have to play our game, not the opponents, nearly every time. Glad we won, though. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This is feast week. They call it that for a reason. And you want to start it with a win. It's been a lot of really good college basketball. But, I've been keeping an eye on a lot of these different tournaments and seen a lot of good things so far. So it continues to make you a fan of the college game when you see some of these matchups. Arkansas and Memphis is intriguing. North Carolina and Villanova is intriguing. This is going to be a big Thursday. Now, advantage also Memphis because Arkansas only had a 2 overtime game, but the Hogs played in the last of the 4 games. And so we'll see where their legs are, where their mental state is, because that's got to be draining both physically and mentally because Arkansas, even though Musselman, we keep talking about when is it going to get to the tight 7-8 rotation. He's had to play other guys. I mean, Pinion came in for a little bit. You saw a little bit of him. Davenport started this game with Mekhi Mitchell. It was Davenport's second consecutive start. Didn't give Arkansas anything there. We saw Ellis check in and not play a whole lot. So we saw guys check in and play a little bit, but your main guys played a lot. They played a lot, and they played a 2 overtime game, and they've turned around and play at 4 p.m. Central Time. So not a lot of rest. Not a lot of recovery in there. Not a lot of time really to plan. Memphis has a little more time for all of that, but we'll see. I mean, Arkansas. If the team that played like it did against Purdue shows up somehow and they flip a switch and that's who Arkansas is, advantage Arkansas. Advantage Arkansas. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I feel like they're still very awkward in a lot of ways, and it shows. But we've seen this movie before. Remember that. Win or lose tomorrow, and however this ends up, Arkansas goes 1-2 in this event. Just remember, I brought up the Hofstra loss a couple of years ago, mid-major in North Little Rock. A week prior to that, they got beat by 22 against Oklahoma in the BOK Center. After losing to Hofstra, they ate a cupcake. They gobbled up Elon, Division I Elon, probably the worst Division I team that year. And then they got into SEC play and dropped their first 3 games. So 5 losses in a 6-game stretch. That team went to the Elite Eight the year before. Arkansas went 2-4 to start SEC play. That was an Elite Eight team. Last year, Arkansas went 8-10 in SEC play. Had some bad stretches in there. We know they dealt with injuries and youth and some other stuff. Almost an entire brand new roster, only 2 returnees. 8-10 for 10th place in the SEC. No one thought that team was going to figure something, punch up some wins in postseason. I mean, Arkansas that last year, 3 consecutive losses to end the regular season. They get off the schneid in the SEC tournament, win that opening game against Auburn, an NCAA tournament team, a good team. Then they lose in the second round, but they get in the NCAA tournament and knock off the defending national champs, the number 1 seed in their bracket, and got to a Sweet 16. So we've seen Arkansas struggle early, mid-season, and end of season last year, and still find ways to be a team that's scary, and gives itself a chance. And so, obviously, you want to win and start figuring things out now, but it doesn't get easier. Memphis, then it's Villanova or North Carolina, and then it's Duke, and then you play a good Furman team from the same league as Greensboro. Furman knocked off a 4-seed Virginia in the NCAA tournament last year. And then you go play Oklahoma in a neutral site. This is what your next stretch of games looks like for the Arkansas Razorbacks, wrapping up November and getting into early December. There's nothing easy here. And Arkansas is not making things easy on itself. I'll give other teams some credit, especially Greensboro. You got to give Stanford some credit too. But at the same time, I thought Arkansas was its own worst enemy in a lot of ways, more so in this game even than the previous game. Wow, what an insane schedule. Yeah, it's tough. Arkansas plays like this against Memphis, they'll lose, and it won't be close. Well, if you can make the other team play ugly and get into there. I mean, Arkansas has, under Musselman, there's just not a lot of blowouts against good teams, and they find ways, even in an ugly game, to get down in the mud and find ways to win in the closing possessions. And somehow they did it again tonight. And so you never know. You never know. You never know what's going to happen in a situation like that. I agree, though, if Arkansas is missing a ton of layups and not capitalizing in some of these other areas, Memphis will close out a game, whereas Stanford wasn't good enough to. Is Mark our closer? Well, he's been Arkansas's best closer uh, in games that we've seen so far. I still think there's a Devo element to that. Um, you got to remember, Arkansas needed that 4-0 run just to get it to overtime. Bynum misses that free throw, that front end. Arkansas's down 2. But Devo did the smart thing. He attacked immediately. It helped you in 2 ways. One is if you don't score or get fouled, there's still clock left that you can foul and still give yourself a chance. The other thing was he didn't settle for a pull-up 3 for a win. He took a hard line and went in there and challenged the defender. So Devo helped close out uh, regulation. He didn't quite help close out the first overtime because he missed that free throw that left the door open, and Stanford banks in a 3 after traveling. It wasn't called to get it to the second overtime. Again, player of the game. This is Trevor Brazile and Tremont Marcus co-players of the game. And you could say try players of the game and throw Chandler Lawson in there. That dude was tough, man. This guy was tough. But I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 players. I can't pick because both of them were so important in this game. And a tip of the hat, honorable mention to Chandler Lawson, but those 3 and Devo. If Devo finishes with 10 points, I think he had 5 or 6 rebounds. He led Arkansas with 3 assists tonight. The 5 turnovers hurt. The poor shooting hurt. It's because Muss is a defensive coach. Yeah, but I mean, that's been their bread and butter. But he's went out and recruited guys that can make shots. They can shoot from 3. We've seen enough of it early to know that they're capable of it against Purdue. But right now the offense is broken, and it's not about, well, if they'd make their threes, it wouldn't be broken. No, the ball's not moving in a good way for anybody right now, and I think it's affecting everything to some degree. I really do, and I think guys are not in rhythm right now. It's a struggle to get into offense. There's talent there. What did Steven? Defense still wins championships even in NCAA basketball for now. Well, that's true. You want to be sound on that end, but you got to get your offense going too. I'm seeing some different responses. Very good. By the way, I have a hard time reading these. I keep my glasses off because then if they're on and I'm not reading something, then I can't really see anyway. But a lot of good responses, the ones I do see, the ones I'm able to read. Arkansas's got a passionate fan base, a great fan base, a knowledgeable fan base. And I really appreciate the comments and the people tuning in because I think Arkansas has an edge in fan base in most ways, comparing it around the country. Maybe I'm biased because I'm from here, grew up a Razorback fan. But at the same time, I pay attention to other fan bases. There's other good ones, other knowledgeable ones. But Arkansas fans love their basketball too. Happy Thanksgiving, Kevin. Thank you. I'm not able to read all the names and all of the comments, portions of them, but thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, by the way. It's HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We're 48 minutes in. I haven't even looked at the Pro Hogs. A bunch of Pro Hogs play tonight. Anthony Black would probably started again for the Magic. Bobby Portis and the Bucks were getting kicked by the Celtics very early in that game. I just saw a score. Didn't see anything else. Daniel Gafford and the Wizards were playing the Hornets, and I don't know if Nick Smith Jr. got in or not. But you had other Pro Hogs. I think the Golden State Warriors are playing later tonight. That might be over by now as we talk about it, or maybe not. But you had a lot of Pro Hogs in action. I'm going to check that out once we get off of here. I'm going to add quotes and other details to my game story. It's a pretty thorough game story given I published it as the clock ran out. I do that every time. And then I just went and added a couple more details real quick before I jumped on here. And I want to write down some of the stats that meant, kind of go through all of it with you. But the Arkansas Razorbacks, 4-1 now. They get off the mat. Good stuff, Kevin. Thanks. Thank you, Stephen. Hogs 35, Mizzou 24. I'm not sure. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Man, it's happier when you start off with a win during Feast Week, and Arkansas has always done it under Musselman. Every tournament that you can, whether it's postseason or in season, they win their first round game, and that looked like it was in jeopardy, and it's probably looked like it's been in jeopardy before. Sure it has. They've had some close calls along the way, but they're 10-0 now in these games, 5-1 in in-season tournament games under Muss. By the way, guys, I didn't even mention this. It's in my game story. Musselman is now moved one game away from his 100th victory at Arkansas. 100th win. Arkansas needs to take care of Memphis Tigers on Thanksgiving Day to hand him to get him to that century mark. That's the way you do it. Love your coverage of Hog basketball. Thank you. All right. Thank you. One thing about basketball since Musselman's been here, there's a lot more attention on it. I've always felt before he got here, and I started doing this, that basketball is a bigger story than has ever been covered, and has not gotten the justice from media. And that's why I started doing it again. Back in 2016, I thought not only the high school talent in the state, but what the Razorbacks can be on a national stage. It's harder in football in the SEC than it is for basketball. It's a storied program. Now you got a lot of guys covering basketball. I really like to see that. I like the attention and the light on it. There's some other good guys out there doing it. So I'm glad to see that. And I'm glad to see, incrementally, you want to believe that this team can continue to move the program forward. And so you got to win games like this. Where is this going to land as a quad win for Arkansas? The net rankings aren't out. Sometimes they're similar to Ken Palm. This was a Stanford team that came in 66 in Ken Palm. It's probably going to struggle to be a top 100 team in net. But if it is outside the top 50, it'll be a quad 2 win up to a certain point. It may end up being a quad 3, but you can't afford a bunch of those kind of losses. So it was important in more than one way. Arkansas's now, Memphis has been a team that's been in the top 40 in Ken Palm so far. Same with Michigan, who Memphis beat. So those two teams would have given you either way a chance to get what will probably end up being a quad 1 win. And certainly you think if you can, whether you in the third place game or you're in the championship game on Friday, it's another quad 1 win opportunity at some point when the net rankings show up. So now, but you had to get this game. You couldn't afford what might end up being a bad loss. And you're now 1-0 playing away from home. That helps your resume regardless of where the quad stuff lands. Anytime you could stack wins playing away from home, it helps. Us older fans in the 90s. Yeah, that's the pinnacle. It's still the peak. We've got those feels these last few years under Muss. It hasn't quite gotten there, but there's you're getting consistent preseason rankings. You're finishing your seasons with rankings. You're making deep runs in the NCAA tournament. Not in a vacuum. 3 consecutive years. How many programs? None, other than Arkansas, have gone to back-to-back Sweet 16s. There's 2 Elite 8s. So, Arkansas, I've said all along, they're built to do better at SEC play this time around to start. Well, I don't see anything right now that backs that up necessarily, but I think the pieces are there. When I always say these things, I'm talking about the individual pieces. The sum of the parts coming together is what's going to matter. And this is where Musselman shines at one point or another, get them to click. And again, does go back to defense. I didn't get to see the post-game press conference because I finished up the first stage of my story, and then I came on here. I'm really interested to go back and look at those quotes, watch the video of the post-game, because I want to hear what Musselman says about the different aspects of the game and some of the stuff we talked about. How does he feel about his defensive team overall in this game? I think overall it was pretty good, except for early stages again of the second half and other parts of the game where they just couldn't close out and get stops. Arkansas could never build a lead. It was just always a one-possession lead for Arkansas. Program's come a long way since the dark days of Stan Heath and John Pelfrey. Correct. Those were dark days for the most part. Heath recruited well. And he got Arkansas back to the NCAA tournament after a few, 2 or 3 years there. But they couldn't have any success there. He just, he went to an Elite 8 in his 1 year at Kent State, coming out of that Tom Izzo, Michigan State family, coaching tree. Took Kent State to an Elite 8 with Antonio Gates, the all-pro tight end, one of the all-time greats. Went on to have an NFL career, obviously. But he helped Kent State get to that Elite 8. And Arkansas hires Stan Heath out of there. And, there was a lot of stuff that was not good about his program on and off the court. But even though they got to back-to-back NCAA tournaments in his last 2 years, they didn't do anything with it. They didn't win. And they struggled a lot. John Pelfrey actually got more out of his players than he did, inheriting a team of good recruits from Heath in year 1, and then Pelfrey showed what he was. He was exposed. Arkansas had its worst conference season ever under Pelfrey. Did they win 2 games? Only 2 games in one of those seasons. So I think it was year 2 after he was there. So, yeah, I mean, Mike Anderson helped resuscitate a program that was effectively a dumpster fire. And he took it as far as he could. Eric Musselman is doing things that are it's waking up a sleeping giant, but it's really a reflection. It's somehow, and in a lot of ways, a reflection of what you saw at times with Eddie Sutton, and then where Nolan Richardson took it. So he's in that upper echelon of Arkansas coaches. He's obviously not gotten to where Nolan Richardson is. He's the GOAT at Arkansas. Eddie Sutton's a close second, pretty close. Eddie Sutton put a lot of guys in the NBA and developed guys. Got a lot of first round, what we call lottery picks now. Had an Elite Eight, had a Final Four, had a lot of top 10, 15 ranked teams. And he sustained it over time. Muss is, he's getting close to Sutton. He's getting close to Sutton. By the way, speaking of which, when he gets to 100 wins, he's at 44 losses. Sutton, I think, got to 100 wins faster than anybody at Arkansas. I know he did. But Muss can be the second fastest to 100 wins once he gets there, assuming Arkansas doesn't completely collapse and miss every other layup it's ever presented the rest of the season. If that happens, all bets are off on winning again. You cannot miss. I mean, one of my tweets in the first half was 6 turnovers and 1 million missed layups later. Arkansas has that to thank for being trailing, basically a mediocre Stanford team. That's how I saw that. All right, we're almost to an hour. We are going to cut it off there. Yeah, I'm trying to be funny. Sometimes I say goofy stuff. With Muss's defense, it feels like 40 minutes of something I missed. That's probably a good one. Yeah, I'm not good, man. I'm too slow on reading these. They're too far away. I don't do this. I still can't read all of it. I get a few of it out, some of it out, and I appreciate you guys commenting. Yeah, it's all smile. I'm smiling a lot tonight because there was so much. It was a comedy of errors for so long in that game, and I just kept getting this feeling that neither team wanted this. And Arkansas's got the pieces to be a really quality team, and the other team is just trying to find its way. It's trying to figure out a way to be relevant. Arkansas's got to do better than that. But they won, and they can build on that. And that's how they've had to do it. They've had to pick themselves up. Under Muss, man, they've had to do it when they get down, and they've had bad stretches. We've never seen them this early. I hope at least 65,000 people show up Friday for the Missouri game. Yeah, that's Arkansas's football Hogs bowl game now. Knock off a good Missouri team. I mean, you can make a big weekend out of it. Feast week doesn't have to stop tonight. Muss maybe gets his 100th against Memphis. You want to beat Memphis? Who doesn't want to beat Memphis? There's a big history there. Todd Day, Penny Hardaway, who coaches Memphis. I didn't even talk about that storyline. He's matched up against Arkansas. When Corliss Williamson and Scotty Thurman were freshmen, Arkansas beat that Memphis team with Penny. Penny had a big game. I think trying to remember now. I think he had a big game when Arkansas lost to Memphis. Well, I got to go back and look at this. I don't need to speak out of turn. I'm getting my ears jumbled up a little bit thinking about it this late. Usually I'm on point with this stuff, and I just kind of went blank there trying to determine which year it was. But anyway, Penny Hardaway was a Memphis Tiger. I actually covered his recruiting. I was interviewing him when he wouldn't talk to anybody else when I worked for the Arkansas Gazette, when there were 2 newspapers, and had several stories following his recruitment. And, it really came down to Arkansas and Memphis, Nolan Richardson and Larry Fentz over at Memphis, and he picked the hometown Tigers. And so Arkansas might have been a dynasty had they brought him in with Todd Day and those guys at the end of that. But he was still around. He's been around for a long time as an NBA player and now as a college coach. He's been around basketball when you go back to the spring and summer circuit, once the shoe circuits came out on the Nike EYBL with Team Penny. So this guy, whether it's recruiting, whether it's getting high-level players, which he always seems to do, say what you will about him, but he is Memphis basketball. He really is. And it's hard for me to spit that out. It's what I was trying to get to. He is Memphis basketball, and Arkansas has a history with Memphis players, and they got one of his, Chandler Lawson, right now. So we got a lot of storylines tomorrow. That's going to be exciting. All right, 59 minutes, almost 40 seconds. I almost don't want to say goodbye because I'm not sure what I left out, but I will say one more time, Arkansas gets off the deck after losing to Greensboro, 77-74. It wasn't easy, double overtime. It was more ugly than pretty, but the W shines brighter than anything else. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We're going to do this again tomorrow. I'm going to talk myself into doing another pregame several hours before Arkansas actually plays, and then we'll have a postgame. But until then, the Arkansas Razorbacks, 20th ranked, moved to 4-1 with a 3-point double overtime win over the Stanford Cardinal out in Battle for Atlantis in the Bahamas. Until tomorrow, see you then.